welcome back to the channel. More Blood and Plunder as we keep working our way through the remaining legendary pirate commanders. And today we have a very legendary one, Bartholomew Black Bart Roberts. So quite the infamous character. Let's jump in. He may be one of the most badass characters that we can actually field, right up there with Blackbeard. Maybe even in some ways better. Doesn't have his own custom force though. But he's sitting right now at 28 points. Really only for one faction, so unlike a lot of the other pirate commanders where there's usually two choices here, we're just in the Golden Age pirates, but that's a-okay. He's got the standard equipment of brace pistols and standard melee weapon for pirates, it seems, and also rocking the very respectable 12-inch command range, 3 command points, so we've got plenty of range and a good pool of points there. But he's also giving us quite the selection here of special rules. Yeah, Commodore, Broadside, Bold, Tough, and God's Blessing or the Devil's Luck. So quite a bit going on for him. Now, Bold, we haven't seen too many of, but we're seeing it more here with the Pirate Commanders. And let's start there. So the commander may always use command points even if his attached unit is shaken or engaged in melee. So very useful for essentially getting things back in order if we're shaken, right? Ideally, we get rallied and not have to continue in shaken status. Not good if your commander's unit is shaken, right? Things are going wrong. But more importantly, we can still issue commands while we're engaged in melee, and that helps us essentially still get the max value out of that in turns where we're actually fighting. So good stuff there. Now he's also a fairly diverse commander, so we're getting basically a couple of naval abilities and then a fair bit that's just useful no matter where we're fighting. So we got Broadside and Commodore, great pairing, right? Broadside, of course, I've seen that one a lot with the major nation commanders, so good to have here, especially when we're on the water. Basically, all the artillery is fired during, his activation is fired simultaneously. That lets us get an increased chance of getting crits, and crits are again going to be the best way that we win naval engagements, aside from just sheer damage that we're doing, because we can really put some nasty effects on the enemy's ships. Fires and floods being some of the favorites, right? Gives their crew more stuff that they have to worry about and spend time doing as opposed to fighting you. Or the risk is they let the fires spread or the flooding gets worse, and those are problems that you don't want to have get worse. But we can also do things like mess up their steering, their sails, their ability to maneuver, etc. And really, if we can then maneuver to a spot where they really can't return fire, we can just, like get behind them, like use some raking fire, stuff like that. So all kinds of fun stuff with that. So always useful. Now, Commodore is especially useful for playing larger games when we have multiple ships because his command range gets increased by another 12 inches when we're giving actions to units on other ships. So a 24-inch command bubble essentially out there on the water, so that lets us spread out a little bit so we're not too close and run the risk of maybe colliding if we're maneuvering poorly or forced to maneuver poorly or the wind is messing with us, right? So always useful to have that. Now, we've seen this quite a bit here on the next one, God's Blessing or the Devil's Luck, with these pirates, and that's basically giving us a 4th fortune point, which, hey, we're never going to say no to that. That is fantastic to have. Lets us be a little bit more aggressive in how we're spending that, and that's fine. That can really come in handy at key points in a game. So the fact that we're not having to do any other things to acquire that, we just get that with this character, right? There's no downsides. Great to have that. Now, last but not least, on top of everything else that we've already been through, this guy is also tough, and that's another fantastic ability to see. So basically, if his unit ends an activation with any amount of fatigue, and it didn't push or gain any fatigue during the activation, you can just remove a point of fatigue at the end of its activation. So that's a nice little ability to have if we're kind of not getting too aggressive with that. Ideally, we're not acquiring fatigue by fighting or getting shot at, so there are some key caveats to that. But in some cases, we can essentially help our force fight better with our command points, and then maybe we somehow acquired a little bit of fatigue at one point in the turn, and then or in a previous turn, and then now we're just going to try and get rid of that. So very, very useful to have. So free removal of fatigue is great. Again, we're not having to spend any of our own actions or command points to do that. It's just something that can happen. So, and ideally in this game especially, The more free actions we can essentially acquire, or more resources like that fourth fortune point, the better. Ideally, when we can do more stuff than the opponent, ideally we're winning the game, assuming everything's going our way with dice and all that and good decision making. So all in all, Black Bart seems to be one hell of a character. Let us know, guys, if you have run him and how you have fared, or if you've come up against him and again how the battle went one way or the other. But definitely seems to be one of the strongest pirates. So at some point we're going to have to test him out ourselves. Hit us up in the comments, like and subscribe, and we'll have more for you soon. Thanks for watching.